Welcome back to Tide Pod on the YouTube home of Tide Illustrated. Jack Knowlton, Tony Sukalis. Happy Valentine's Day. When you're listening to this, it will be Valentine's Day. When we're recording this, it's my good co-host Tony Sukalis' birthday. So throw a happy birthday in the comments section. And Tony, I mean, no better way to spend your birthday than recording a Tide Pod, because at least you're recording a Tide Pod for the most anticipated game of the season. It's the IBOB, number 1 Auburn, number 2 Alabama in Coleman. Very, very excited for this game. We're going to preview it in just a second. We're going to look back quick on the Texas game, just take our kind of residuals from that, because finally, as Alabama can now turn its full attention to Auburn, so can we. I feel like this game's had everyone's full attention for a while, but let's go back, Tony, to start to this Texas game. Alabama's latest win, defeating the Longhorns 103-80. There was no second half scare. I did note at one point they did have an 18-point lead with like 6 minutes left in the exact same situation as they did against Arkansas, and we saw how that turned out. Of course, the Razorbacks cut it to 3. Texas did not look a threat of doing that, did not really look a threat of winning this game outside of they actually were up, I think, 16-13 in the first 7 minutes of this game, and then Alabama just took off after that. But yeah, the Tide rolls in the Moody Center, a arena Nate Oates is apparently a big fan of. He was asked about it after the game, said it was maybe his favorite arena in the SEC. So maybe some elements of design that Alabama can take into whenever it inevitably builds the new Coleman.
Isn't the Moody Center a little bit bigger too?
Yeah, I think what they do is
bigger stadiums. He's now talked about. I mean, granted, they're big programs. He's now talked about Kentucky, Arkansas, and the Moody Center. Those are all like bigger stadiums.
I think what they do in the Moody Center, I think he said this, is they close the top bit of it for the basketball games, so the capacity is less for those. And then I think they have concerts in there, so they open it back up.
That makes sense in Austin.
Yeah, they open it back up. But anyway, stadium elements aside, let's break down what happened on the court for Alabama that got them through this game, and we have to start highlighting a couple of individual performances, particularly a one Mr. Jarin Stevenson. And I want to get to what you wrote about him, because I thought that was a creative spin on his huge night for Alabama. He set a new career high, 22 points, shot 7 of 8 from the field, 4 of 5 from 3, 4 rebounds, and a block as well in 20 minutes, 22 points in 20 minutes. By far his best performance since the Clemson game of performance. I know a lot of people were waiting for from him. He's been in the starting lineup, has not had the numbers probably that really justify it. Oates has talked a lot about this defensive leverage stuff and how he likes him matchup wise, but now he kind of stuffs the stat sheet here, Tony. And, first of all, I wanted you to elaborate on your theory that you wrote about over on Tide Illustrated, but just a big performance from Jarin at a huge time for him to gain some momentum ahead of this back 7-game stretch against 7 ranked teams for Alabama.
Yeah, I just made the point that Jarin Stevenson plays better when he's going up against a team that's wearing orange. I mean, look, he looked a lot like the Jarin Stevenson that led Alabama to the Final Four with a win over Clemson. And so, I mean, maybe that's a positive sign with Alabama playing Auburn. I know Auburn doesn't have – I don't think they have an all-orange uniform, but they definitely do have some orange in their uniform. So maybe that's like the red with the charging bull for Jarin Stevenson. Maybe that just kind of gets him going. I don't know if he just hates orange or if he loves orange or whatever it is. But no, if they get the player, if Alabama gets this Jarin Stevenson, they're borderline unstoppable. I mean, obviously you can't expect someone to go 7 of 8 every night, but I mean, just what he brings on the defensive side of the game, if he finally, can hit shots like this, it adds a whole nother element to Alabama's offense. And really, it really does, I think, make Alabama unstoppable. If they can have an outside presence that's 6'11", I'll believe it when I see it, if this becomes a regular thing. But I mean, if you're just want to be Johnny Optimist over here, Alabama could really just go on a huge run if Jarin just opens up his game and starts playing like this.
I think Jarin Stevenson's play, for me is somewhere in the middle with what you're saying, where, you do have to get more consistent. It can't just be these kind of once in a blue moon performances where you shoot the lights out and drop 20 plus, lead Alabama in scoring, but it also can't be the, over kind of disappearing on offense, Jarin Stevenson, that has been the more consistent thing that we've seen, pretty much over the course of his Alabama career. But to me, I think, with these last couple of games, and, Texas isn't a physical team. They lost Arthur Kaluma in this game, their best big. Jarin was clearly able to kind of get his, as was a lot of guys in the front court for Alabama. But I think with the last couple of games, and I saw it against Arkansas too, it seems like he is starting to turn that corner offensively. He's playing to me a little bit more like Mohamed Diabate is playing. That's what I've kind of noticed. Mohamed Diabate, a guy not afraid to drive it, not scared to turn the ball over, if he goes a little bit uncontrolled at times. And his offensive game has taken a big leap too. And I think what we saw at the beginning of the season was kind of a hesitant Jarin Stevenson, a guy who drove into traffic, stopped, was a little bit scared to go up against guys, fear of getting blocked, turning it over, whatever it was. And I think you're seeing that a lot less. There was one play I remember, I think he got an and one. I think it was against Arkansas. He's kind of rolling his shoulders back after the ball goes in, looking at the bench. Like, I think he's starting to take a lot more pride and really embrace that physical side of his game, which is huge at his size. And what it does, to your point, is, when teams have to be so fearful of him as kind of that straight line driver, it opens up the opportunity for him to hit threes. And I think, you're hopefully going to start to see, and he's going to have to now do it against some of the best competition in the country, but you're hopefully going to start to see something in the middle of what we've gotten from Jarin Stevenson. And I think even if that's the case, Alabama is still going to be kind of close to that unstoppable on offense. I really like what I've seen from him.
Yeah, and I think, and I don't have the stat, and I'm not gonna be able to find it in time, but I think he's shooting in the mid 30s or something for three during SEC play. Like, it's really, his numbers have been down just because they were so awful at the beginning of the season. So he really might actually, it's not going to be 4 or 5 from three every night, but no. I think he has been better at better from distance, and I think, we could start to see an uptick in his production. And I think we said it in a previous podcast. Like, if they could just get 1 or 2 of those corner threes from Jarin Stevenson in game, that could be big into opening up the defense. So, yeah, you're right. Very encouraging from what we've seen from him.
Yeah, I think if it's 6 points, 5 rebounds, and a block, and 1 of 2 from deep, given what Alabama's offense is, I think you live with that. And then anything more you get on top of that is going to lead to wins. So, I don't think, and obviously he can still grow from there. He's only a sophomore, but we're not trying to cap him at that. But, I think given his role, I think that can be a very decent output for him. But a very good game. I think it's a game that comes at a big time for him as someone who they're going to need to contribute. If they want to finish positively in this back stretch of 7 games, they're going to need all they can get from everybody. So good to see that from him. And then the other guy, kind of along those same lines, a player looking for a game to turn his momentum, Labaron Philon off the bench. 15 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and a steal. His first double-digit scoring game since he went to the bench or flipped with Chris Youngblood in terms of his place in the rotation against LSU. A huge return to form game for him too. Looked way more confident. Was going, of course, against his former teammate at Link Academy, Trey Johnson, who is very, very good, by the way. An NBA team is going to be really happy with Trey Johnson from Texas. But what did you like about Labaron Philon's performance? I know you wrote about that after the game.
I liked his confidence. He also, after one of those threes, he turned to the front row of the Texas section and kind of did like a three in your face
gesture.
Kind of yeah, a gesture. And so, I mean, Labaron Philon's a player that wears it on his sleeve, and you could see that he had been losing his confidence a little bit with this slump. He had a little bit of an ankle injury, didn't miss time, but you could see it was affecting his game. When you look at the way he was playing, not only just in terms of production, but in terms of confidence, in terms of just having that swagger back to him, I think we really saw that against Texas, and that's big. I mean, look, Jarin Stevenson, you take what you can get from his offensive production, but Labaron Philon was one of the biggest, weapons on offense for Alabama early in the season. And then Chris Youngblood came in and, his role kind of decreased. But if you could get the Labaron Philon from the beginning of the season now, and then still have Chris Youngblood, I mean, that's another one of those huge shot in the arms. It'd almost be like getting another player just based on the last 5 games. So I think, in terms of maybe what you'll notice, I think Labaron is, Jarin stole the show in terms of production against Texas. But I think when you look at it, I'm almost more encouraged to see Labaron get, that swagger back, because I think that's going to be huge. You talk about guys that can drive to the lane. He's one of them. He's a very physical player. He hustles, does the blue collar stuff. I like Labaron. I talk about guys that I think are going to be lottery picks. I still think, he probably has to play his way back into that a little bit because he fell off, but I still think he's probably going to be a lottery pick. And yeah, he's got a huge future. And if he starts hitting it like he did against Texas, that'd be just at the right time for Alabama.
Yeah, I thought that was a big confidence game for him. Another guy too who he didn't have a good night against Arkansas, but his one bucket was, he kind of took a big into the paint, did a couple pump fakes, finished a really tough bucket over him, and you kind of saw it there. You're like, okay, he's getting back into the swing of things. And then I think this game also will be huge for him. Another just blistering offensive performance from Alabama. 61% from the field, 58% from three, 90% from the line. Should give him credit for a nice free throw shooting performance. Mark Sears, 18 points. Aden Holloway, 18 points off the bench. Mohamed Diabate was also in double figures with 13. I think all three of those guys deserve just a quick shout out. I mean, it was just flat out domination. Texas was just kind of overmatched by Alabama and Austin, but I think it's a credit to them not overlooking it. I like what Nate Oates said. He said to get these 2 road wins on this road trip was big for us. It gives us some confidence. Then he was like, we played well on the road, though. We've got a veteran group. They tend to like the road. They like seeing the stands empty early when it can get down, and they seem to embrace the villain role, which I think is kind of fun, seeing Alabama as the villain. But a resounding performance against Texas offensively. We are going to talk about some of the lingering stuff in a second because they have to, obviously keep that same energy. They are the villains on the road. They're going to have to go home and play hero now, though, Tony, because they've got the biggest game of their season coming up. They can finally look at it in the face. They got through this road trip. Auburn navigating a trap game, too, against Vanderbilt. That's a tough place to play. They knocked off Tennessee there earlier this season. So both of these teams did what they had to do, and now they're finally meeting in Coleman Coliseum. It's the IBOB. It's 3 p.m. Central Time in Coleman. ESPN. College Game Day is going to be there in the morning. So definitely tune into that as well. I am very excited for this game. Do you want to give some opening thoughts, or should I give right into the lingering stuff from Texas that concerns me for Auburn? Which would you like me to dive
I'm
into?
interested. Let's go.
You have a preamble.
Go
All right.
for it.
My lingering things. Obviously, this Auburn team is incredibly tough on paper. Nate Oates called them the best team in the country. They are the best team in the country. They have the best resume. They have the best metrics. Whatever way you want to shake it out, whatever system you choose to use, they are the number one team in the country. And there's some things that, I saw from the Arkansas and Texas game. It's obviously good that Alabama got those 2 wins, but I think we got to start with the turnovers as something I'm looking at, as something that's got to be cleaned up against Auburn. Alabama has averaged 16 turnovers in its last 4 games. Auburn ranks number 2 in the country in points off of turnovers. I think they're a little more than 15 a game, according to CBB Analytics. So, Oates has called it a major issue. Tony, I don't know if there's a good number in your head that you think of when you're like, all right, Alabama can't get over this, but it definitely has to come down from 16 or they're going to be in big, big trouble for me, especially the way they start games with some of the turnovers and letting teams get out to a lead. That's my first one, turnovers. I think, I hate to beat a dead horse here, but it is continue to be a problem. We'll say Mark Sears cut down. He only had 3 against Texas. That's going to have to be about where he's at against Auburn.
Yeah, I think you probably want that number to drop down to maybe 10. That's a long way, but I think that's probably, if you're going to ballpark a number, that you want to be closer to that. Because I don't think Alabama is going to shoot 62% against Auburn the way it did against Texas. Look, if Alabama's shooting, they can afford to make a little bit more mistakes. But I think this Auburn defense is going to be a lot better than, maybe the defenses that they've faced the last 2 games. So it's going to be, they're not only going to punish you in terms of scoring off the turnovers, you're going to limit your offensive game. So those less possessions will lead to less points. You just can't fool around with that. I still think, Mark did, he did, I can lower the turnovers. He only had 3 turnovers, but at the same time, I still think he drives into the hole sometimes a little bit in, just a little bit, aimlessly,
Cattywampus, is that a good word for it?
Wampus, yeah, that's a good word. I don't know why I said the whole into the lane, but anyways, yeah, he drives into the lane just kind of like looking for a foul sometimes, or just uber physical and just throws it up. And then you saw a couple times against Texas that didn't get called, or he just loses the ball. And you're probably going to get more calls against Alabama, especially with the crowd, in Alabama against Auburn, but with the crowd. But I still think you can't just come in aimlessly. It's the same thing we talked about last week. You come in, you play fast. If it's not there, work some of the half court offense. I mean, you've got guys like Jarin Stevenson who are heating up. You've got guys like Labaron, Philon. You can also move the ball around and hit some players. So it doesn't have to be this, I know they want to score in the first 15 seconds, but if it's not there, don't force it. And I think especially against Auburn, just let it happen. Try to score fast. If it doesn't, move on. And I think you saw a little bit better from Mark, but I still think there's some areas that you need to work on. I really like Aden with the ball. I know that you're not going to take the point guard role away from Mark Sears, but I'm really impressed with his composure. If I'm looking for a player to watch in this game, all the pressure is going to be on Aden, an Auburn transfer, but I could see him being a big part in this game, not only in terms of obviously his shooting has been amazing. He's shooting like 50% lately from three. But he's a great distributor of the ball. I think he's very calm in against pressure and when teams are pressing. So I highlight Aden Holloway as somebody that, maybe Alabama can turn to kind of limit some of those turnovers, and while also distributing the ball really well.
I think too, I agree. I like all the 3-guard lineups you can throw at them, different ball handlers and all that stuff. I mean, Auburn, they're 17th in defensive efficiency. They have a great defense. They're not necessarily a team. They're not like a Vanderbilt or a Missouri where they're going for steals and that's what they live and die by, and then run outs. We saw Vanderbilt score a lot of points in transition, but they will hurt you when they do get those. They're very opportunistic on defense, and they play smart defense. And to kind of build off that point, I'm looking for kind of better composure, I think, when you do get the ball in the lane. And I think, it does help that Alabama likes to score fast, get quick paint touches. But, I look at Clifford Amore and Mohamed Diabate combined for, I think, 6 turnovers against Texas. Grant Nelson, I remember the second half in that Kentucky game, had a bunch after they were kind of force feeding it to him inside. Auburn is a very good defensive team in the lane. They're obviously really high. I think they're number 2 in block percentage. I know those don't directly count as turnovers, but to me, when you already have to, drive against a team like that and really work to get established, get to the foul line, establish driving lanes, doing all that, if you're giving the ball away on top of struggling to get clean looks when you do get it to the rim, I think that could be a recipe for some problems for Alabama. So I think guys like Grant Nelson, Clifford Amore are going to have to do a good job, taking care of the ball. And then, it just can't be uncharacteristic turnovers. You can't give away possessions. Auburn doesn't do that. I think they're number 2 in non-steal turnover percentage, which just means they don't give away possessions that you have to take the ball away from them to score. So, they're not going to give anything up, and they're going to pounce on everything you give up. So, turnovers is the big one. And then, kind of building off of that, for me, the other thing is the offensive rebounding. They gave up 14 boards against Texas. That was over half of their entire rebound total. They gave up 13 against Arkansas. Auburn ranks 4th in the country in second chance points. So, to me, you kind of couple that together, points off turnovers and second chance points. Those are possessions given away and not, as earned by Auburn. And Nate Oates has said he can live with boards if you stop that secondary possession, which is something that Duke and Florida had some success doing when I look back at those games when they beat Auburn. But, to me, we're going to talk about Johni Broome. Johni Broome's going to get his rebounds, he's going to get his points. You can't let him rack up that many boards. You have to, after working that hard, you're playing the number 1 most efficient offense. If you work hard enough to force a missed shot, you can't let him get an offensive rebound because that's going to tire you out. It's going to suffocate you over the course of the game. I think that has to be better too for Alabama.
I mean, this is why Alabama got Cliff Amore, right? I mean, this game, other game, having played against UConn, it's for games like this. These are the tournament games where you're going against elite bigs. And so it's going to be, I mentioned a lot of pressure on Aden Holloway. I feel like this is kind of the opportunity for Cliff Amore to earn his money. I mean, this is why he was brought in to stop guys like Johni Broome. And I'm not saying he's going to limit him to 4 points or something crazy. I mean, but like Johni Broome shouldn't be able to dominate Alabama. That's why they got Cliff Amore. That's why he's making, $800,000 or whatever in NIL. It's to stop these bigs. And we've seen him be a presence, but I think it's going to be key for him to stay out of foul trouble.
Yep.
Because I could see, when you talk about stopping, Auburn down low, I think if you're Auburn, if you can get Cliff Amore into foul trouble, and then from there you kind of can maybe work with Aiden Sherrill, I think things could be kind of a lot more deadly, because I think that maybe Auburn can expose Aiden Sherrill a lot more than they could expose Cliff Amore. But I expect Cliff to have a big game. Maybe not in the stats, but I think he's going to give Johni some headaches. I don't think he's going to totally stop him, but I think that it's going to be he's going to have a presence in this game for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a collective, right? I mean, the depth at forward is a lot better than it was when they played Auburn last year, and they managed to beat Auburn last year. They're much more talented now, but yeah, I mean, I think it's going to take a lot from Cliff. It's what does that open up for Grant Nelson in terms of him as a rebounder? I mean, we've talked all year long, his numbers are way up, and I think that's because Cliff can kind of occupy bigs a little bit better, that allows Nelson to get bored. So I think those two are going to be big. Jarin Stevenson, we talked about him. This is a game again where maybe he doesn't dominate the stat sheet, but just having him to guard a Chad Baker Mazzara, a Denver Jones, give some of those guys problems, because Auburn has 6 double-digit scorers in addition to Broome. Like, I think it's going to have to be collective. Mohamed Diabate is going to be huge in this game. So the collective front court presence is going to be huge, but I think there just needs to be more pride taken on the defensive glass. I think, against Texas, you can see it. I mean, some laziness. You're up big. You give a lot of O boards and garbage time, but you can't have that same mindset against Auburn. And you talk about Broome. I mean, we could just get into him a little bit. He's averaging 18.1 points, 10.7 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 2.7 blocks per game. He leads Auburn in all those categories. He's their leading assist player. Like that was the biggest surprise for me. He's in the National Player of the Year race against Cooper Flagg from Duke. Against Alabama, his 2 appearances last year, 25 points, 14 rebounds, 5 blocks. That was actually the game Alabama won in that game. He was a little bit worse in the game in Neville. 24 points, 7 rebounds, also had 5 blocks and 2 steals. So a collective 10 blocks. I mean, what does a good performance against him look like? For me, I look at those and I'm like, 3 blocks. Keep him under 5, because I think – when I looked at, to go back to the front court thing, Duke and Florida, I think Auburn had their season low against Duke, 3 block shots as a team, and only had 4 block shots against Florida. And, when I was looking for kind of statistical outliers, which is hard to find for Auburn, that to me was one of them, where in their 2 losses, other teams were able to put pressure on the rim without them racking up a million blocks. And, I said how good they were in block percentage. That to me is the biggest area. Is if Johni Broome's going to score 27 and grab 13 rebounds, so be it. It wouldn't be a season high in either category, by the way. But, if you limit him to 1 block, I think that's a win. I think you're looking at a tied victory there probably.
Yeah, the only problem with that is there has been 2 teams that have limited Johni Broome to 1 block. It's Purdue and Duke. So that is not an easy thing to do, right? I agree with you. I think that you got to limit those. And that kind of goes back to our decision making when you drive to the lane. I think you're just going to have to shoot. I know that sounds like a simpleton answer, but like the shots are going to have to be falling in a game like this. And so like you're going to need some of your big players to just have good games. I mean, I think you do all the stuff that it takes to win, but in this games, I mean, the shots kind of have to fall, because both teams are going to play the hard-nosed style. They're both going to pressure. I mean, obviously you can do the little things like take care of the ball, and that will help a lot. But Johni Broome's going to get his points. He's going to get his blocks, and Auburn's going to make their shots. you're going to need big performances. You're going to need your stars to play like stars. You're going to need guys like Mark Sears to come up and have a big game. I like not just a quality game, but just a Mark Sears type game. And I think, I think Mark Sears 25 or more points kind of game. I like you need him to really take control. And then, I think you also have to get a little lucky in these kind of games too. I think, there's going to be a lot of emotion in this one. There's going to be runs on both sides. I could see Alabama. I could see one of these teams coming out pretty hard. And I'm not even sure if it's going to be Alabama with all the emotion behind them, or maybe that, kind of hinders them. And I could see Auburn maybe jumping out to like a 20-11, lead or something like that. If that happens, either way, Alabama needs to have the intangibles to kind of either maintain it and not let their foot off the gas, or not, put their head in the sand when Auburn jumps out to a big lead, because you can come back from that. You're at home, just do the little things right. And I think doing those little things will, as Nate Oates has always said, kind of open up those shots, but the shots are going to have to fall. I don't see Alabama winning like some kind of a rock fight against Auburn if their shots are not falling. And I'm not saying that they're a 3-point dependent team, but in this game, with as good as Auburn is, you can't really have an off night.
I completely agree with you. I think, you and I both know we've watched every Alabama game this season. It is, to me, if someone says, they live and die by the three, they haven't watched Alabama this season, because their 3-point percentage is lower than it has been in most Oates years. But I think how you perform on both sides of the ball in that area of the court, I think, is going to hugely define this game. Alabama, one of the underrated parts of their 40th ranked defense this year is their 3-point defending. Teams are shooting about 29% against them from three. If Auburn gets down to close to that and Alabama hits its season average in 3-point shooting around that 34-35%, I think Alabama could be in really good shape for this game. So I think you're right. I think it's taking some pride in defending the three. If you're not going to turn Auburn over very much, which no team really has, so I don't know where that's going to come from, but I think that's a big area where it can help the Tide defensively. And then, if you can spread them out, and it all flows together, right? If you can establish a few paint touches, if you have a couple of possessions where you get the ball inside, you make Auburn respect that. Alabama's able to then spread you out. Threes get a little bit more open. They have so many weapons who can shoot it. It's hard to defend for anybody. So it works on both fronts. I think the 3-point line is huge in this game on both sides. So I agree with you there. And I don't think it's a limiter for Alabama in terms of how they beat teams, but I think it's going to be big, in terms of how they can kind of execute against this Auburn team.
And Auburn really hasn't been punched in the mouth a lot, so I think that, if you do come out and you start, you come out and you hit 5 of your first 7 threes, you get an Auburn team that might be a little bit disoriented. This is a team that's used to, playing with leads and used to coming out and bullying teams. And you can come out and punch them in the mouth with as loud as Coleman's going to be. I think that you could really take some momentum off of that. And then that just goes back to the challenge of Alabama sustaining that if they're able to do that. But yeah, I think a lot of the things you said, you're not just going to magically force Auburn into these, turnovers, or you're not going to get a million steals. You can't just be like, you can't just play hard your way into that. So I think you're right about taking, pride in your defending, playing hard on every possession, and just hoping that, you can get those rebounds. That's what I said. I think it's going to be a big, Cliff game. I think I think Mo D could also come in and be a guy that could help out on the boards as well. I think you hustle Auburn, you take whatever they give you, and then you just got to knock down your shots as well. That's kind of like basketball in a tee, right? But it sounds simple, but that's kind of the game plan for this one.
Yeah, definitely. There's a take what you can get element. The first kind of 7 minutes of this game are going to be really, really interesting, because funnily enough, you're exactly right. Auburn, both of Auburn's losses against Duke and Florida, it was exactly what you said. Auburn came out, they were up 13-3 against Duke in Cameron Indoor Stadium. And then I think Duke went on a 16-6 run from there, tied the game up. Same thing against Florida, up 12-5. They're beating this Florida, another team that's good on both ends. And then the Gators kind of came in with the response. I predicted that Alabama is actually going to have a similar-ish performance. I just have not seen this team start games well. I don't know what it is, and maybe it will be different. You do have to throw a lot of the trends out the window with this game, and maybe they will punch Auburn in the mouth. But they've shown that if you get hit, you can get back up and get back in it against Auburn as well.
Look, the thing I'll say about that is look how they started against Kentucky, a team that they were super up for coming off of a loss. Like, I think a lot of like maybe their slow starts just they haven't been as up for the game, or they haven't been as ready. They're going to be juiced for this game. So maybe they respond differently. The only thing I can see is that maybe they're too juiced. I mean, they've heard about this game forever. They're going to have college game day there. The fans are going to be rocking. Like, you can get overly hyped and then, just kind of that's where mistakes are made. If that happens, though, the stadium is going to go down a little bit. There'll be a lot of Auburn fans there, too. And so they'll be noisy as well. But I think you just have to remember, we're at home. We're also a good team. And you just keep on playing your game because you can't panic if you, like you said, go down 12-3 or whatever, 15-5. I forget the two scores you said of those two games. But yeah, like, if you just got to keep that level head and then kind of win the mental game.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I kind of lump, I think Alabama and Auburn are a step ahead, but Florida, Duke, Alabama, and Auburn are all kind of in that same crop of really elite teams. Both those teams got up off the mat against Auburn. Alabama can definitely do the same thing. But you're right. Is it a matter of does the juice overflow, or is it a perfect storm of, this is where we finally see Alabama come out on that 11-2 start? I haven't seen it yet this year. I am curious to see. And, funnily enough, their biggest lead in the SEC game this season to start a game was 18-8 against Arkansas. And look at how that game ended up turning out.
I don't think either of these teams are going to blow out each other.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if either way, if this was a blowout game. I think there might be times, like you said, where a team goes up by 10, but this is not the final score of this one is going to be pretty close. I think it's going to come down to the last 2 minutes of the game. I'll be shocked. I'll also just be disappointed if it's not a close game because I'm expecting a classic for this one.
So I think that's a perfect place to segue it. Oh, I do want to give a quick mention of everybody else. Or this is a prompt I wanted to ask you, then we'll predict the game. Other guys for Auburn, Chad Baker-Mazara, who, by the way, is the same age as Luka Doncic. Fun fact. 12 points, 3.5 rebounds, 1.3 steals per game. I think everyone kind of knows about him. They have Miles Kelly as a double-digit scorer. Denver Jones, who sounds like a 1950s detective. Off the bench. And then off the bench, they got two guys in double figures. Their second leading scorer comes off the bench for them. It's Todd Pettiford, really talented freshman, 11.5 points per game. And then Chaney Johnson was on the team last year, averaging about 10 and 5. Tony, does Alabama's bench get outscored tomorrow?
It's close. I actually don't think so because I think you guys like Aden. I'm just going for the storyline, but I'm willing Aden Holloway into having the way he's playing. I think he's going to have a big game. So I think maybe a guy like that probably sends Alabama. You also got Mo D. I like Alabama's bench. I know Auburn's also got a good bench. I think Alabama is the deepest team in the nation, so I'll go Alabama bench points. Then again, I did say that Mark Sears has to have like 25 points. And so if he's just hot, maybe they feed him. Look, I'll tell you this. If Alabama loses the bench battle or whatever, I don't think it will necessarily be because Auburn's bench just totally outplays Alabama. I think some of that stuff's dependent, right? If Johni Broome is going to get 30 points, then maybe Auburn's bench doesn't do as much. And the same with Sears. I think that the overall depth of both teams is outstanding. So it's just a matter of, how the game rolls out, how the starters do, if somebody off the bench gets hot. That's kind of a hard thing to predict. But I think both teams have, really good benches.
Yeah, I have Alabama's bench outscoring Auburn's too. That was one of the predictions I made for this game. Alabama's third in the country in bench scoring, Auburn's ninth. So I think that really could come to define that game. I think Aden Holloway will be a huge piece of that. I think Mohamed Diabate will be a huge piece for that. It'll be interesting. Alabama's low of bench points, to your point, though, was against Kentucky. They had 24. That game, of course, Grant Nelson had 25. Mark Sears had 24. I think you're going to need a little bit, you're going to need a combo of both. I look at like Texas A&M when they beat them. That's another really deep team, a team that, plays with a lot of energy. You kind of needed your depth. They had 40 bench points in that game. So I guess we'll see kind of which shows up. I think it's going to need to be a little bit of both. And there is a lot of times where, and Nate Oates talks about it a lot, where the bench, someone like Aden Holloway gets 18 to 20 points, and then all of a sudden you look up and Mark Sears still has 20 to 22, and you're like, how did that happen? He just somehow gets to 20 points every time. But yeah, a lot needs to go right for Alabama to win this game. But as they've shown, a lot needs to go wrong for them to lose games. So I think you're spot on. It's going to be close, and I think that's where we bring it to a prediction. Would you like to give a score prediction? I have one written down. I can go first if you want to think about it on the
No, I'm going to go 90 to 86 Alabama. And my confidence level is not super high, but I think it's hard to win IBOBs on the road. I fully expect Alabama to lose at Auburn at the last game of the season, but I think, these things have a way of evening themselves out too. And Alabama lost the last game day. I'm a big level out kind of guy. And Alabama lost the last time game day came when it was Dalton Connect in Tennessee. I think that they win this one. Take first place. We'll see how they can get through this gauntlet. I don't think winning this game necessarily clinches the SEC by any means for Alabama, but it might keep them in it longer just because they're going to have a gauntlet stretch coming up. I think it's going to be a huge win for Alabama. And I don't know, would it be announcing itself to the rest of the nation? I think people kind of know what Alabama is, but I think they would make them temporarily a very deserved number one.
It definitely would make them a deserved number one. I think what it would do is it would more bring, I think, Auburn down to earth. I think in a lot of people's eyes, it's just Auburn in the field right now. And then I think if Alabama wins this, you kind of expand that top tier. You're like, all right, it's Auburn and Bama. And then, do you lump Duke in there? Florida beat out Auburn as well. Maybe that's my big four. And then I think I got Houston just on the cusp of that as my kind of premier 5 teams who I legit think could win the national championship. I have Alabama winning 88-82. I think they're gonna sneak one out as well. I predicted them to not lose the rest of their home games. I already want to flip on that because I am worried for them against Florida. I think Florida is going to come in there and give them a really, really good game. Just a reminder,
man, that stretch is so brutal.
Just a reminder, if you don't know at home, after this game against number 1 Auburn, Alabama goes to number 21 Missouri, home against number 15 Kentucky, home against number 22 Mississippi State, at number 5 Tennessee, home against number 3 Florida, and then at number 1 Auburn. Obviously, those rankings will change, but there you go. That's their last 7.
How was a trip? I'm not even trying to dunk on your Tigers here. How is a trip to Como like one of the easiest games you have left on your schedule? That is insane. Like that's a place that Alabama doesn't usually play super well, and like that's going to be a game that they pretty much have to have because you're going to play a hungry Kentucky team after you beat them in Lexington. Same thing with Mississippi State. You go those could all be losses, and they won't. But it's incredible.
Not to lean too much into a Mizzou preview, but you want to talk about bench scoring. Alabama's number 3. The Missouri Tigers are number 1 in the country bench scoring. There's your fun fact for the day. In the SEC. So none of these games are easy. Obviously they beat Kentucky and Mississippi State on the road, which in theory is the harder game, but both those teams could knock you off at home. It's just how the SEC is. It's ridiculous, but there you go. IBOB. And then final 2 things. How many points does Aden Holloway score?
16.
I have 19.
Oh, wow. Okay.
19.
I thought I was being bullish with 16.
I think you're going to need a big game from them. I think the bench could actually win or lose Alabama this. I'm kind of not worried about Mark Sears. I think he's going to do great. I think he's going to do what Mark Sears does. He will have to make the plays in winning time, but I think in order to put Alabama in that position, I think you need the bench.
How many threes do you have in? Because I had him going 3 for 5 in my hypothetical 16 points.
I'll go. I got to think about this like a football score. I will go 4 threes, so that's 12 points. And then he hits 2 regular field goals and then splits a pair of free throws.
But what is he from 3? So he's 4 of
12.
Oh, okay, all right.
A lot of threes.
They're just gonna. That's not that would be quite.
Nate Oates will go up to the podium and say he should have shot 16 threes after that game. By the way, so if you call that a crazy prediction, it's not.
Yeah, because I feel like they haven't been giving him enough threes. Like that's
No.
why I went 3 of 5 because I don't know if they're going to give him.
Yeah.
I guess my prediction too is that Mark Sears is going to have a lot of. I think Mark Sears is going to, whether it be a good
40
thing or a
piece.
bad thing, going to take the ball into his own hand. Like I think you're just going to see Mark Sears just like try to go beast mode. And sometimes when he does that, it's a great. Sometimes he forces turnovers and he's a very frustrating player. But more often than not, when he does that, he does really good.
You could tell me anything's going to happen in this game, and I could talk myself into believing you. I'm tired of guessing. I just want to watch it. My last thing, then we'll end this show. Do you think the lights stay on this time? That favored Auburn, by the way, in Coleman. Johni Broome hit a 3 when the lights were off.
Right? Yeah, they beat Alabama playing in the red.
Yep.
I definitely think the lights. I wonder if they even like change
Do
it.
you
This
even?
time. Can you imagine if they didn't? If it messed up? It has not messed up since.
That has not.
I hope somebody didn't get fired for that. But yeah.
I think against Florida there was like a spotlight that like stayed on for a little bit. Like the lights came out, but there was like a brighter spotlight in one part of the court that we like saw. But yeah, they have not gotten broken. I wonder at that point it's sabotage. At that point you've got to be thinking.
At that point you're starting to like it's probably Auburn. Like it's probably like there's no way that it messes up twice. And
there's something about that. Yeah.
That'd be
we'll
funny
see.
though if it did. What if this time it was blue? That'd be even worse. At least it's stuck on the red. It was the red, white, and blue. What it like you're playing Auburn? What if it gets stuck on the blue and you're playing in the blue tint? That's even worse.
You look up and KD Johnson is dangling from the Raptors, attempting to escape, and he's sabotaged. George Mason, by the way, is where he's at now. They're leading the A10, so congrats to KD Johnson. All right, throw all the record books out. It's the IBOB. We have plenty of preview stuff over on Tide Illustrated too. We'll talk to Nate Oates on while you're listening to this. So definitely go subscribe over there. Give us a follow on Spotify. Leave us a comment. Give us a score prediction for the IBOB. Very exciting game upcoming between Alabama and Auburn. Very excited to be in Coleman Coliseum for it. He's Tony Sukalis, the birthday boy. I'm Jack Knowlton, and we will see you next time.